You see 3, we see 6.
You see 2, we see 3.
You see 3, we see 11.
You see 6, we see 7.
You see 2, we see 3.
My name's Tobias. I'm 8 years old. I've got 3 brothers, 3 sisters.
I was 4 years old and I was with my 2 sisters, and Mum was pregnant with 2 twins, a boy and a girl.
I can remember that I was told Jessie was coming in a couple of weeks.
Most days we would feel for kicks and stuff.
And when I was born, my twin passed away called Imogen.
Before she was going to have my little brother, she told me that he's not going to come home.
And then when we went to the hospital and Mum told us that she had died and gone to heaven, we were just so sad and confused.
I was the first one, actually the only one to see him at first, apart from the nurses. And he was tiny, but he was perfect.
You're looking forward to this birth for 9 months, and then it actually is born. And then someone's got to make the decision to turn off its life support. That is horrendous. It was just broke us up.
And he'd rung Dave, and Dave was on his way. And she kept trying to say, I'm going to go, and she was just hysterical. I couldn't understand a word she was saying. She had to say it twice before I actually realised that she had told me that Riley had died.
Amanda was like any mother who'd just given birth. She wanted to make sure that Jessie was not getting cold, that take care when you're holding him.
Ben was standing next to where Jamie was being worked on, and the hospital staff were working so hard. And Ben was traumatised. He was so upset.
Deep down we all knew that he mightn't survive. I think he only had a 50-50 survival.
And I remember her being in the hospital waiting to be induced with Jessie, and everybody had left the room, and she called me.
He was this beautiful little boy who we weren't going to be able to share his life as we have done with our other grandchildren. But nevertheless, a very important person in our lives.
Then Jen arrived. She'd been at another hospital with our sister-in-law Brooke, whose son Lachlan was also in hospital at the time.
To see Beck give Jed a chance, because she could have terminated the baby earlier, but she wanted to give him a chance.
And when Jen arrived and saw Jamie, she just collapsed on the floor.
And then when that conversation ended and I had to hang up, that was probably one of the hardest moments, because the next time I talked to her, she would have gone through, giving birth to Jessie, and I wouldn't have been there, and I couldn't have offered any support during that time.
There was a period where, after we lost Jamie, Lachlan deteriorated, and we lost him as well.
Your heart is literally ripped out of you because you want to take that pain away, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do to take it away, to change it. The pain is there.
And you kind of got to stop feeling yourself and just focus on them.
When Andy lost Riley, it brought back the memories of us losing our 17-year-old boy to leukaemia a few years earlier.
It feels like you're walking on eggshells. And it also feels like, in a way, you're guilty for not being able to help them.
And you say stupid things and you don't even realise what you're saying half the time.
It's hard when you're a friend or a family and it's not actually your child that's been lost. It's someone that you love dearly who's going through that loss, and that pain can be just as great and just as intense.
It was horrible, just watching everybody around me fall to pieces.
I really tried to be there for Beck. But I think I'm just too emotional. I really hated being the way I was.
I felt like I was doing what I could for her, which never felt like it was enough. But at the same time, I felt like I had nowhere to go and nowhere to seek support or help for myself.
We'd experienced that feeling of loss. We could understand and knew what she was going through.
They asked us to organise the funeral for them because they just couldn't do it.
My little grandson, I mean, he got a chance to hold the baby. That was his brother. He waited so long, talked about him nearly every day.
I remember asking Andy to see photos of Riley because I wanted to be able to see his face. And she said to me, are you sure you want to see them? And I went, yeah, I do. I want to share that with you.
Jen decided at the last minute that she would carry the coffin in. And we walked in behind them.
I'd always been a problem solver, always been able to solve people's problems. And here yet again was another problem I couldn't solve. I didn't have the magic wand to change it, to make it different.
Having gone home without the baby, that was a shock for everybody. None of us could cope. My wife fell to pieces, my daughter fell to pieces. I guess my son-in-law, ex-son-in-law, he fell to pieces too because it cost him his marriage at the end of the day.
I had to go and get help. It was just, I just couldn't cope seeing other babies. I had a psychologist. She was very good.
At around the time that we lost Bailey, my niece was also pregnant. I found it so hard to hold that baby or even to look at her.
I remember having to get the courage up to ring Andy to say, we've decided to have another baby and not feel guilty about that. And then we ended up having a boy. And I remember thinking of Dave and Andy at the time. Thinking about Riley.
Bailey wasn't my first loss. My eldest daughter went through miscarriage. For many people, a miscarriage is just a miscarriage, and that's gone. Let's get over it. Let's move on. And I don't know how to get through to people that they're both equally as important.
I think with supporting someone, there is no right or wrong. Just like there is no right or wrong way to grieve. I think the best thing that a friend or a family member can do is just be open and be available. Amanda had a baby. She had a son. She wanted to talk about him. We still talk about him. They are such a very important part of their life and who they are.
I think there were practical ways to support them during that time. Practical ways like looking after the kids, buying them tea, doing whatever needed to be done from a physical sense. But probably by far the most important was being there when they needed someone to talk to.
Andy and Dave had their bad days, and there were days when Andy didn't want to talk to me. And I didn't take that personally. I just said, okay, today's a bad day and you call me when you're ready.
We did all that we felt we could do, but the reality is it's not what you're doing, it's how the other person perceives it.
I think it's sometimes very hard to show support without speaking, but I think that's one of the most important ways.
You need to acknowledge your own grief as well, and just, I guess, go with it, because it's not healthy to kind of tuck it away too much, and sometimes you can be a little bit too strong.
There are things that people don't think about. She had to go to the shops to get something, and she said, "Can you come with me and be my buffer?" And I thought, I didn't think of that. She has to go to the shops and face all those people that she sees all the time and relive her story over and over and over again. So I would go with her to be that buffer, to be that person who would, let other people know before seeing her so that she didn't have to relive her story over and over again until she was ready to live her story over again.
I have beautiful nieces and nephews today, and even though they never met Jamie or Lachlan, we want to talk about them. We will talk about them.
Nick and Jen bought a star, and so he has his own star. And whenever I'm out of a night time, I know exactly where his star is.
Support has become more about remembering Riley, talking about him, remembering the milestones, the birthdays, and lighting a candle on his birthday and on Pregnancy and Infant Loss Day in October.
I remember meeting one of Amanda's close friends about 3 months after it happened, and she said to me, "I haven't phoned her." And she said, "Because I don't know what to say." And I said, "Well, why don't you ring her and just say, I don't know what to say?"
The more you talk about it, the more people actually talk back to you, and you learn about all these different experiences. My own mother, she lost a twin at full term, and she never got to talk about it.
Everybody's looking at me as being a strong bloke, so yeah, that's fine. But they don't see me when I'm on my own. So yeah, it's all right. I'll get there.
I think we need to place more attention on men and their psychological needs. I think we're brought up with the précis that boys don't cry. I think we as men need to cry at times, and we need to have a society where that's accepted.
No one wants to talk about something that's sad and tragic, but I think we just have to, because it's so common and it's so hard that the more we talk about it and the more resources there are, the easier it is for the families and for the friends to move on and grieve and move forward.
There should be discussion about it, about how to deal with it over time, not just when it happens.
The tragedy is that, nobody wants to talk about a dead baby, and that's the reality, but it's so important because that baby was so real, and the existence needs to be acknowledged.
For Jen, Bears of Hope, I think they've been a lifeline. I don't know that she would have coped without them.
I think why Bears of Hope works so well is that it is people who know what these families are going through, that they have such an impact. Because it's not just somebody talking from theory or from books, it is from the heart.
I went onto the Bears of Hope website after Andy had brought home her bear, and because I hadn't heard of Bears of Hope up until then, because I didn't actually know anybody that suffered a loss like this.
And it showed Jen that she's not on her own. She's part of a family that you really don't want to be a part of, but that family is there for them. And I've just seen her grow from that, just from strength to strength.
I did find some support pages on there for friends and family, which were invaluable.
It helps so many people, and not just the people who've lost the babies, but it's the grandparents, the siblings, the whole, it's like a ripple effect. It just goes out, and you just don't know how many people have been affected.